correctly with the correct amount.
D20 Radio, where gamers roll.
www.d20radio.com.
Welcome to Me and Steve Talk RPGs, a podcast where me and my friend Steve try and help you get the most out of your role-playing game experience. Hey, what's up, Gamer Nation? Welcome back to Me and Steve. I'm here today with my good friend Steve.
What's up?
Oh, not so much. How about you?
Oh, no.
Cold and snowy?
Cold and snowy.
Woohoo! January.
Makes me jealous for our friends out in Australia.
Yeah, well, it's January now. It won't be when people listen to it. This time warp thing is weird. Or will it still be?
It's not going to still be January when they hear this.
No, it'll be the 1st of February.
Will it be February? I don't know what day of the week it is right now.
Well, it depends on what time zone they live in.
Oh, for them? Yeah.
Because
okay. So this will go up February 1st for our time zone. For in them, it would be February 2nd.
Right. But if someone on, say, the west coast of the U.S. were to download it the instant it drops and listen to it, it would still be the 31st of January.
It would not, because it drops at midnight.
Right. And our midnight is 11 o'clock Central, 10 Mountain, right?
I think, unless I don't know. Somebody out on the East Coast, tell us, or West Coast, not East Coast. I don't want to hear from you East Coast people. We're on the East Coast.
Yeah.
Somebody out in the West Coast, tell us about it when you get the podcast on.
It would be 9 p.m. on the 31st would be midnight on the East Coast.
Okay. I'm curious about I guess probably.
I don't know.
I was curious that like if it just drop until midnight.
Yeah, well, that's true. It could. I don't know. It screws with me. And then the way they record days for our metrics are based on GMT. Yeah. So it's really screwy.
And we're always trying to coordinate with somebody who's not in our time zone. And
yeah. Okay. So enough of us being confused by time zones. What is our D20 podcast of the week this week, Steve?
The D20 podcast of the week is the Staggering Dragon.
Oh, I like the Staggering Dragon.
I do like the Staggering podcast.
They're a lot of fun. What the Staggering Dragon is it's a bunch of friends that get together and, well, it's either Genesis or Star Wars actual plays or just them riffing about various pop culture elements, usually Star Wars and or I'll say Marvel related, although they probably do some stuff about like the DC stuff and that. But they're really a whole lot of fun. They are a little adult often, but they're very, very, very entertaining.
Yeah, cool podcast and just a really fun time.
Yeah. And you can check them out at thestaggeringdragon.com. And of course, as always, there'll be links in the show notes. So you can find that easier than typing things. You can just click something.
Yeah. So this week, we're talking about a thing.
Yes. Well, we're going back to, I want to say it was in September, we did our Q&A episode. And we got a lot of questions about player engagement and how do you encourage it and so on and so forth. And it was kind of like, well, we got enough of these and these can get deep. So maybe we'll just do this as its own episode instead of trying to shoehorn it into a couple lines here. And of course, there was some reference material that I intended to refresh myself on a bit more than I got to because life has a funny way of not letting me do the things that I intend to do in the time that I mean to do them. But I'm sure I'm not the only one like that.
You and me both, bud. We're in the exact same boat. Things going on and games happen, and I am not even prepared for them.
So, to just before we get into the weeds of talking about all this, I think there's probably two things we're going to, or at least I'm going to reference in this discussion. And one goes back to very, very early episode for us about player types and the definitions that Robin D. Laws put forth in his, call it a book. It's actually a really small little thing. It's only about 32 pages called Robin's Laws of Good Game Mastering, which was put out by Steve Jackson Games. And it's a GM guidebook, but it's not.
It's a system agnostic GM tips and tricks book, basically.
Yeah. And it's intentionally not, what do you want to say, a beginner level book. It specifically says in it that this is intended to pick up, from the how to do this stuff that you get in a lot of games. It's intended for people that have some experience. It's not the, hey, I'm about to GM my first game, read this. No, this is intended, not that you couldn't read it then, but it's intended as a more, instead of a 101 level, it's probably a 2 or a 300 level book.
Yeah, I would say that. It's probably a 200 level book. Honestly, I look at it as, and having skimmed through it, I'm gonna give it a read here probably, I don't know, next couple days when I get a chance. I look at it as sort of what you would read after the preamble or after the GM tips in a RPG.
Yeah.
It seems like that's a useful book to have.
Yeah. I have a PDF of it, but I at some point would like to find a physical copy of it. I think you can get it off the Steve Jackson website.
Probably Amazon might even have it. I don't know. I haven't looked.
Yeah. But yeah, there'll be a link somewhere in the show notes for that. And then the other thing, and this was actually recommended to us by Justin Eacock, who you heard just a couple episodes ago, but it's an episode of a podcast done by another former guest, Ryan Bolter, who joined us for the Safety Tools. His podcast is called Character Creation Cast, and they did an episode quite some time ago called The 8 Kinds of Fun. And I didn't get to listen to all of it, but I did get to listen to some of it and get the general breakdown of a lot of it. And it does kind of tie in with all this as far as, getting engagement and the types of fun being some of the reasons that the people you're playing with are there playing.
Yeah. I listened to a couple minutes of it. I just haven't had time to listen to a full podcast. I even have time to listen to my own podcast most of the time. So it seemed like a really good discussion on player types and engagement and getting everybody involved at the table.
Yeah. Yeah. And it ties into that player types. And at the moment, I'm blanking on the name of the guest that they had on that episode, but I do remember is a game designer in addition to just being, look, someone who, and he was citing an article. And so, yeah, there'll be a tree of links for you guys to follow if you wish to see, the some of the stuff that we're kind of basing some of our ideas here on. But I mean, where do you start with the topic of engagement? Because I know it's something that we all strive to get more of when we're running games, right? You want your whole table there and participating and being engaged, but just because you want it doesn't make it happen.
That's why I always look at having a good understanding of the type of players you're playing with.
Mm-hmm.
And I do like, we've talked about this in the past, but I like to give my players, especially if I haven't really played with someone and we're going into a long form campaign, sort of send them the link to the Robin D. Laws player types quiz.
Yeah.
It's a way to get an idea of just a baseline of what they're looking for in a game, maybe.
Yeah, that quiz is really good. I mean, and it breaks things down a little differently, and some of the terminology he uses is a little bit different.
Right, but I think it makes people. I always like that in a quiz or in questionnaires or thought process, because it makes you think about things at its core and not like looking for specific questions.
Yeah. Well, and I think he mentions this in his definitions of these types in the book, and even in the 8 types of fun thing, they were saying it's very seldom that you have anyone who keys into one specific type of fun or one type of player exclusively. Everyone is generically everyone is some sort of mishmash of these things, but there are everybody has their preferences. There are things that is their biggest interest or their biggest motivation, if you will.
Right, and having an idea of what kind of mix you are, or what you're looking for. I think it helps you. I think it helps you as a player more involved, because then you, and not to be like rude, but gives you an idea of when to walk away from a table. The table's not playing a game you want to be playing, or a style that you want to be playing in, it lets you know, hey, this isn't the game for me. I'm just gonna step away at this point. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that we need to, I don't know, in my opinion, talk to a lot of people that are like, yeah, but it's the only game I can get. Well, in real life, when we were playing games in real life, that may be true. But online, you throw a rock, you can find a game online.
Yeah. It may not be the game you want, but you could find something.
Yeah. And you can find players you like playing with, and you can, just don't be afraid to. I'm not saying this is a way to be rude, but don't be afraid to just walk away from a table and go, this isn't the game for me.
Yeah. It's easier said than done, I think, but
And I understand that it is, but it's sort of one of those things where your end goal is to have fun. If you're not having fun, there, you know what I mean?
mhm.
I don't know. Maybe I'm rambling.
No, it makes sense. I think, and two, it's also a deal where if you're not having fun, you can be dragging down the fun level for everyone else. And there's a difference between I'm not having the maximum amount of fun or these people are having fun in a way that isn't fun for me. And I think just because it's not your maximum fun level doesn't necessarily mean it's one you want to walk away from. But if it's their type of fun is something that's not fun for you, then that's probably not a table where you're ever going to really be happy.
I agree. I think that I don't know.
Well, do we want to maybe just run down the categories as Laws puts them out just real quick?
Let's do that.
Okay. So I happen to have the PDF called up in front of me, and the first category he defines is what he's calling a power gamer. And he's defining that as basically someone who wants to make their character, bigger, better, and richer, regardless of what rule system they're using. Their whole thing is to build very optimized character, very much within the letter of the rules, but they're looking to, how can I get the best whatever out of it? They're very, as he puts it, they put the game is very heavily emphasized for them in the term role playing game.
And these are the people that you'll see oftentimes that want to min max characters or just optimize their play. Make a character that is the most powerful thing that they can make.
Right. So I think, if you have that type of player and that's what your table's primarily made up of, to get engagement from them, you've got to have that carrot on the stick in front of them of this is a way for you to make your character better. This is how you can gain new powers, abilities. These are people who probably are going to be very motivated by advancement.
Or even gear.
Yeah.
Say in a system like Cyberpunk, where advancements it exists, but it's more annular. It's
Yeah.
maybe more about gotta look, we got this guy's got a better gun than what you got, or this guy's got can afford that upgrade, or you know what I mean.
Yeah. They're out for a tangible reward.
They're out for something that can make the game, in their mind, maybe easier.
Right.
And keeping that difficulty up for them so it doesn't become too easy is important, and not making it so difficult that it's impenetrable.
Yeah. So do you want to do the next category he defines?
Next, we have the butt kicker.
Mm-hmm.
It's described as the person that wants to let off steam, old-fashioned vicarious mayhem, combat-ready characters. So I would call this a murder hobo, but I mean,
To a certain point, I think I see two things here. I don't see this as necessarily being, yeah, to a certain point, it's a murder hobo, but it's also someone who builds a character that they specifically want them to be effective. You know what I mean?
especially in combat, though.
Yes.
This is a person that is laser focused in on fighting everything and anything if possible.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, have to understand that that's the type of person that you're really balancing your combats around. The power gamer you're going to make, that's going to set the difficulty. Butt kicker is going to set the frequency of combats, encounters, whatever you want to call them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they want to win.
Well, they want to win, and they also want to have that fight.
Right. And so if again, what we're getting at here is that depending on your player types, this is what they're looking for. It's what it's going to keep them engaged. There is no magic formula of just do this. It's you've got to know your table. You've got to provide the things that are going to get your players engaged.
Right. And you have to understand that when you're keeping those players engaged, I think sometimes as GMs, and I'll say this now, is that I get lost in, oh, I wrote this story and I made this game. I didn't cater it to my players. And I think sometimes we need to step back and actually start catering our games around our players that we have
Mhm.
or around the table, because it's important that everybody's having fun.
Yeah.
Maybe not 100% of the time. There's things that happen in games that are not always fun for specific characters, but it's important that we do cater our games to the players that we have so that we can have a good time as a GM, they can have a good time as a player at the table.
Mhm.
And some of the people that are maybe quieter or a little more reserved about what they want out of a game, you sort of have to figure out, will they get really engaged when say you have somebody in the next section, you have a method actor who is not so much about any of the combat, somebody who's like way less interested in combat but way more into role play. Well, then now you have to balance the game around that. Or we have to remember that RPGs are there are basically two or three pillars in RPGs, right? Like there's pillar of combat, pillar of role playing, and arguably there's a third pillar, and that's just character advancement. But in some systems that doesn't exist.
Right.
Character advancement, like in say Warplands or Curiosity, is just character developing as a person.
Right. It's narrative. It's not mechanically reinforced.
Right. So balancing the game around the two main pillars is important because at the end of the day, that's what we're here to do.
Right.
We're here to role play and we're here to play a game. I know that there are some very heavy role playing games that are just pure role play and very little gameplay itself. There are some very heavy role playing games that are mostly game and a lot less role play.
Mhm.
There's one that says that it's one way or another, and they just it's just understanding how to balance those tables for the table that you have at hand. That's the biggest thing for player engagement.
Yeah. And to go a little more into the types, you've got the next category that Laws brings up is the tactician, which, probably someone who's a little bit of a military buff, maybe has a background in tabletop war games. But, their biggest thing is they want a challenge. They want to be challenged. They want to prove that they're more clever than the opponent.
They're they're more likely to be into whether it be a challenge against an opponent or even somebody you'll find more interest in running a covert ops team or something like that. Like
Right.
this is the person that's really planning it out. And so like Delta Green, you're the person that's sitting down and going, all right, well, we have these clues and we need to figure this out, and you're literally spelling it out for the rest of the group.
Right. This is the player that wants, so to speak, it's not about what tools they have, it's about making the best use of the tools that they do have.
Right.
So, yeah, for a player like that, they're looking to show that they're clever. They're looking to have those opportunities to outsmart the bad guys, not so much just beat them up and take their stuff like maybe the butt kicker or the power gamer would.
Then moving on from there, we have the specialist. This is the person that plays specific character types. In every campaign, they have their thing that they like, they have their character that they play, and that's what they do. That's sort of their around their personality. I like that it describes them as like cat people.
Yeah, or they always wanna play the ninja or,
Right. Like I've talked about it before. I have a friend that always plays like paladins and clerics.
Mhm.
All he wants to play, and that's fine. This is a person that it's sort of as a GM, I kind of like it because it's sort of easy crutch to understand. Oh, well, they're going to play this character.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, you know what to expect.
yeah, that's not saying that their characters are all the same. They like a specific archetype. They like a specific character type, and
Mhm.
and they like a specific maybe subset of character.
Yeah. And all they really want out of a game is a chance to do the thing that is their thing.
Right.
So from there, we have the next one is the method actor, which you've talked about, and I don't think this one we need to define a whole lot, but it's they're very into to being in character, and to a certain point, maybe they're a little less predictable because they're very wed to the character they have at the moment, but that may be very different than the character that they had in the last game, and so all they really wanna do is be able to be their character.
This is the kind of person that is they're invested in being that character, and that's what they want to do. Now, their character may differ, and again, keep in mind that all of these get mixed together.
Right.
One person is not just this specific type, but there's always a dominant player type, and then there's secondary player types essentially. Everybody has that one specific thing that they want, and then your percentage comes out of there.
Right.
So a method actor is somebody who is going to play a character that, they're invested in the character. They're there for the theater of the whole thing. They're there to tell the story. And that's great. It's another really good way. If you have a method actor, dialing up the role play and you're getting amazing player engagement out of it as long as they're invested in the story and their character feels important.
Mhm. Yeah. They don't so much care what's happening as for the why they're doing it, I guess is maybe a good way to put them in a nutshell.
Okay, yeah, we next have the storyteller. This is the person that probably your note taker in the group. I can't say that for certain, but in most cases, I think they're probably the note taker in the group. They're the ones that like to embezzle things about the game. You might find this person doing a lot of like coercion or what is the term in the deception checks.
Mhm.
Try and pump up the story, and they're all about where the method actor is about their specific character, the storyteller is about the story as a whole.
Right, and progressing the story and the plot.
Right.
Yeah, and so, yeah, those type of people, they may get bored if things are dragging along.
They're the type of people that are it's boring to sit for another, oh, we're gonna sit here with another shopping episode, or you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, where the method actor may really enjoy the shopping episode because it gets them to be able to do the barter and haggle thing,
right,
and they get a bang out of that, where the storyteller is like, "Yeah, but nothing's happening in the story."
right. The bad guy's not here, so why are we here?
Mhm.
I mean, that's not saying that, a storyteller can't have fun with any of that. And again, we've talked about everything is a little mix of everything.
Mhm.
Storyteller, that's what they're all about. They're all about that moving the story along.
Mhm.
And last but certainly not least, do you want to talk about our last one there, Steve?
Sure, sure. Then you have the casual gamer, and this person, we all know them, we all play with them, and they're kind of the casual gamer is just such a kind of a thing, right? Because most of the time they're not terribly into the game, and that's okay. I guess is the best way to say it. There are a lot of times they're there because they're friends with these people, and this is they wanna hang out with their friends, this is what their friends are doing. It's not that they don't wanna participate, it's just that that's not, and we'll get into this a little bit with the types of fun, but they're there to be with other people. It's a social event for them, and it's not that, how do I wanna say it? They're getting their fun by being there, not by specifically being engaged, and I find it really interesting that, following these breakdowns of these player types, Laws has a little bit of stuff about how to engage these type of players and so forth, and the actual line from the book is, "Don't worry about the casual gamer."
Yeah, and
And
it's kind of true. I mean, as long as their friends are still there, they're there. I mean,
yeah.
and sometimes even I think when I started gaming, I'll say this, when I started gaming when I was, oh geez, because I started in 2008, so I would have been about 10. When I started
Mhm.
gaming, I was the casual gamer. I was there because my friends were like, "Oh, we're gonna play Pathfinder. It's gonna be fun." I'm like, "That's fine." I just went along with it, and I was the casual gamer. I was having fun because my friends were having fun. Then as I got more invested, I started learning. I'm like, "Oh, I like that. I like this. I like the pretending to be somebody that I'm not. It's the fun of the combat, but it's also the narrative that's happening and putting all the pieces together. It's all of those things. And yeah, to say not to worry about the casual gamer is sort of daunting. You're sort of like, well, I don't know, maybe maybe I should worry about if they're having fun. But as long as they're there, they're having fun.
Yeah.
The casual gamer is the first person to get up and go, this isn't for me. Walk out of the room.
Mm-hmm. But it's also pointed out in this, if you want to call it a book, if you want to call it a long article, it's often also pointed out that sometimes these are the people who provide that important buffer between some of the other, if you've got a couple of more power gamey butt kicker types and a couple of storyteller method actor types, the casual gamer can kind of be the buffer zone between them to a certain point.
I find the casual gamers that I've played with are usually the ones, they're the narrative anchors away.
Mm-hmm.
Because casual gamers is the person that they're not so invested in the role playing. They're not so invested in the combat or the game of itself. They're there for the whole experience. And it's the social experience outside of the game, it's the social experience inside of the game, it's the escaping to play other characters, it's the being around a table and playing with friends or being online and playing with your friends. And so they can kind of be, like it says, the sounding board or the buffer between the player types, and that works really well because you need that. You could run a table with just power gamers and just maybe storytellers and method actors, but you would have hard rifts in where everybody's having fun. It would literally be, all right, we're going to stop your fun while we do this. We're going to stop your fun while we do this. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
the casual gamer kind of ties it all together.
Yeah. Yeah. And if they develop into one of the other types over time, because like you mentioned, a lot of us start in that casual gamer thing, then, you, I think that the key to keeping your players engaged is knowing them and giving them what they want. And so, yeah, well, we've spent the last 20 minutes or half an hour talking about player types. It's vitally important to your engagement to understand these player types because you have to know what they want to be able to give them the things that they're going to pay attention to.
Exactly.
It's like Jay Little mentioned when were talking with him about the obligation thing he developed for Edge of the Empire, which is basically a mechanical implementation of what is your character interested in. That's a system that has that. Most games don't quite as directly, but that's the thing, right? Your key to engagement, I think, is giving your players what they want, and the key to knowing what they want is to know them. We're back after a short technical hiccup in case something sounds weird at the end of the last bit. But we're going to get into the 8 kinds of fun as described in the character creation cast episode that we've referenced, and you'll find links to in the show notes. And the first type of fun that they're bringing up is what they're calling sensation, which is, what do you want to say, stimuli. It's the sound of rolling dice, the feel of shaking that big handful of dice. It's, like if you're playing Dread, it's that sensation of pulling that block out of the Jenga tower, that kind of thing. They're feeding on, people who this is their kind of thing are feeding off of those specific sensations, and that's what they're going for. They're the person who gets that rush from rolling a successful attack roll or getting a really big damage roll, that kind of thing.
They're the kind of person that's looking for the sensation of playing the game. Whether it be the
Right.
sensationalization of the game, the sensation of rolling dice, or anything that is sensational, they're looking for that.
Right. The adrenaline rush, the endorphin rush, whatever.
Chasing that dopamine. Yeah. Next we have on the list. Next we have the fantasy aspect of it, which is, granted, I haven't listened to it, so I'm guessing here that's probably the escapism.
Yes.
The getting away from the game and all that.
Right. It's not fantasy as a genre. It's like you said, the escapism, the playing make believe factor of it. And so, yeah, that's what they're there for. That's, this is probably going to be your I'm gonna say to some extent, probably a little bit more your method actor types, to push it back to the player types. They're there to immerse themselves. And from there, I mean, you go from there, they went into, people are there for narration. And this is very much, as you would guess, your storyteller types. But and I did get to listen to this part of it. They were saying, these are people who are very much keyed in, either consciously or subconsciously, a lot of times, to story structure. And so, if even if you've got a story, they were talking about. I wish I'd gotten time. I need to go back and listen to this again. But they were talking. These are people who very much key into the three-act narrative and that kind of thing. And so they're very much, in most cases, expecting a specific structure, and so they need, going a little bit back to talking about pacing with Justin Eacock, they need that, introduction, climax, resolution cycle to keep happening for it to be engaging and interesting for them.
They need the story, the everything story. The narration is part of it.
Yeah.
Next, we have a challenge,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm assuming are the people that are looking for that's pretty self-explanatory, actually.
Yeah.
It's the ones that want quality. It's the ones that want a challenge, whether it be puzzles or combat or whatever it may be.
Yeah, they want the game aspect of it. They want to be challenged. They want, be it puzzles, combats. Yeah, I think this probably, to a certain point, is something that your power gamer, your butt kicker, and your tactician all thrive on. Just different aspects of it.
Moving on from that, we have Fellowship,
Mm-hmm.
which is a thing that sort of our casual gamers looking for, but everybody's looking for a bit of that. It's the everybody together, everybody doing a group task, people from different walks of life coming together to play a game. Is Fellowship's important in this hobby.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where, that is, I mean, that's the casual gamer described to a T, pretty much. That's their fun, is being there with their friends, and that's a slider that I think is in different places for everybody. But, like, I know a lot of the gamer people that I've known through the years tend to be somewhat introverted away from the game table, and so I think that's a slider that's generally pretty high for a lot of us. But perhaps for some, like the casual gamer, maybe that's the only one that's particularly high for them. And that's not wrong. It's just the way it is. So, from Fellowship, we go to Expression, which I think, is again, they're people that are there to enact something. The method actor, they're there to express
Express
things.
themselves in one way or another, or
Yeah.
yeah, and that's pretty self-explanatory. I
Yeah,
don't
I
think
think so.
it.
I didn't get that deep into the other podcast, unfortunately, but yeah, I mean, it's still, expression seems pretty self-explanatory, so that's what I'm going to guess it is.
Discovery.
Mhm.
This is, I think this is in Dungeons and Dragons, they talk about the three pillars. We've talked about that in the past with
Yeah,
Wes Morrissey and all that. But
combat, social, and exploration.
so this is the discovering new things. This is the exploration. This is the finding wild places and exploring different worlds and discovering maybe even secrets or things along those lines.
Yeah, I think it can tie into the narration, though, too, in that you're discovering the story. I think for me that's a thing, right? That it's about, finding out what's next. Part of the joy is being surprised at that next plot twist, that discovering of the things that have been happening in the background that you didn't see. So I don't think it's just a discovery in the, if you want to call it the Lewis and Clark sense. It's it can be also a story thing, not just, if you want to call it a geographic or a world building exploration, discovering. Did that make sense?
I understood.
And then the last one, they're calling submission, and I would love to hear their take as to what this is, and I wish I'd had the time to do that, but I'm guessing that's people who get some enjoyment and relaxation out of not being in control, because this list is, I think, more geared toward players as opposed to the GM, but that's what
And
my guess would be there.
that's why I'm not gonna lie, that's why I like being a player sometimes. I like to be able to sit back and have somebody tell a story around my character.
Mhm.
And I think that's kind of the submission idea, is that submitting to enjoying a story, you're submitting to just relaxing and chilling out.
Yeah.
And not necessarily, I mean, sometimes stories can get really difficult and involved, but more or less what you're doing is just submitting yourself to be sent on an adventure and whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it's and again, I full disclosure, like I said, neither of us got to listen to that part of it, and just by the definition of the term, it could be a lot of things, but I think it has more to do with giving up, express control of the situation and letting yourself be taken for a ride. And so I think that wraps up that. And so to kind of circle it around to the engagement and how do you get engagement? I mean, I think it's knowing your players, taking, some of these elements and trying to figure out which ones the people at your table are finding fun, are keying off of, and then figuring out how to balance those elements to get a relatively balanced level of engagement from people, while keeping in mind that if you've got the fellowship person or the casual gamer there, that in all honesty, they're having fun not being as quote unquote engaged as everyone else. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. I think with all that being said, you just want to move into
Game of the week.
Game of the week. Game of the week.
All right, so it's time for game of the week. So you want to go first, or you want me to go first, Steve?
I've been going first. It's your turn.
It's my turn. All right. Well, my game of the week this week is one that I got to be honest, I don't know as much about as I'd like to, but I've heard a lot of talk at various places that I hang out on the internet, Discords and Facebooks and all those fun couple of podcasts, whatever. It's a game called Unknown Armies, which is now in its third edition. And I think it's put out by Atlas Games, but I believe the primary authors were Greg Stolze and I don't remember. But yeah, I mean, the authors listed are there's quite a list. Cam Banks, Greg Stolze, a bunch of different people. But Greg Stolze's part of a bunch of the stuff for Delta Green and so on and so forth. But I don't know a lot about the mechanics of the game, other than gonna say it's a modern kind of occult horror-ish game. But I think it's more about it's a modern occult conspiracy game, not necessarily horror. And here it is, originally created by Greg Stolze and John Tynes. But in any case, it's a game of modern occult conspiracy and investigation. And the one thing that I've learned about this that I find really, really intriguing is that it's expressly stated that when you're setting up to play this, you sit down at your session 0 and you find out, you go around the table and you build what is fact in your world of conspiracies as a table. If you want to say that, Roswell was real or Bigfoot exists, or, and I'm just making stuff up here, but it's a very, very collaboratively built world. And so I think there's another thing as far as engagement, right? If you've collaboratively built the world, now it's by its very nature, it's more interesting to everybody. But like I said, now this book, I'm probably just going to in my in the links in the show notes link the entire category, because there's a number of books to it in PDF. They're usually around $15. I think this is a game where may require a little more initial upfront investment, because I think there's at least 3 books in, like, the, if you will, the core rules. But I've heard a lot of really cool stories about people playing this, and it it just seems to be, with the right people, this could be a really, really fun game, and fun kind of mentality to explore, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah. Oh, it seems like a really cool game. Definitely something to check out. So I have a
Mhm.
game, because I'm kind of obsessed with I don't know, not obsessed, I wouldn't say. I was watching a movie the other day, and then One Shot did a playthrough of this, and I was like, this feels like that. So I watched SLC Punk the other day, and One Shot played a game called Punk's Been Dead Since '79. And it is about growing up in the Midwest in the like late '90s to early 2000s, where players are playing as punks. They're playing as fans of punk music. It's about finding your place in the world. In an idea, it's about being an outsider in a small town where you know people don't get it. I just think it's a really cool, weird, like, the more I look at it, the more I'm like, yeah, I love this game. Like, it's you've got 20 minutes to drive to the nearest mall. Like, there are only 5 other punks in the town. None of you really get along. Like, it's stuff like that. It's this coming of age and realizing, coming of age and finding your voice and being a person type of game. And I don't know. I've sort of like I looked at it. It's literally $2 on Drive-Thru RPG.
I couldn't find it on Drive-Thru. I found it on Itch.
I'll send it to you.
Okay. Like, I got it to come up, but it wasn't coming up for some reason.
But yeah, $2 on Drive-Thru. It's such a cool game. Just something neat to think about, and for people that are really into characters, something that probably really dig into this is if you're into characters and you like building characters around that. Definitely just a cool game.
Cool. Yeah, it sounds like fun. That's a whole. What do you want to say? Oh, there we go. Oh, okay. It
Drive-Thru
just
do the
did the
thing.
adult thing.
Yeah, we need to talk about that. Apparently, Drive-Thru now has, like, if a game has adult content, it now has a tag on it and won't let you view it. I don't understand. This is a new thing because I've never had this before.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Yeah.
not like this is a super raunchy game. You know what I mean?
wouldn't. I mean, okay, violence, sexuality. Well, punk does get into
Yeah, but
social angst a lot. That's kind of the core of it, but still.
so does Morkborg. But like, I don't know. I understand wanting to be safer website, but apparently Drive-Thru has new settings. So if you're on Drive-Thru RPG and you're looking for a game you can't find it, go into your account if you have one. If you don't, make an account. Go in and make sure that the allow explicit content box is checked, because I don't understand. I didn't look, and I guess maybe I should, if other games
Yeah, I was just thinking about that because there's a couple of things that.
look at, like, Cult, because that's a
Yeah, I don't know if it's a new thing, but yeah.
it is a new thing, because Cult has the same tag. This title has adult content.
Okay. Well, I mean, Cult is a very heavy game, if you will. I wouldn't deny that at all.
Oh, but I just was looking to see to peek. I'm surprised that they don't have it on Morkborg, because Morkborg is a very heavy game too.
Yeah, that's weird. I don't know.
Anyways, so yeah, that's a little PSA. If you're on Drive-Thru and you're like, I can't see any games, like, go into your settings and make sure that if you're over the age of 18, you can view the adult content games. If you're not, I don't know, talk to your parents.
Yeah. Well, quite frankly, we suggest a lot of games that probably are a little more adult than not, but
Yeah.
hey, we're adults, so that's,
Yeah, and I'm sorry, we may suggest games that have adult themes, and that's just sort of, I don't know.
Yeah.
Also suggest, I mean, there's been games like we've had Wander Home suggested. That's a game that has no adult, like,
Yeah.
it doesn't have the adult themes or stuff like Genesis or Star Wars or anything like that,
Mm-hmm.
With all that being said, as always, links to everything are in the show notes.
Yep. Patreon is live now.
Patreon is live now. As of tomorrow, it is officially live.
Yeah, tomorrow in real time, not tomorrow in podcast time.
Yeah, no, it's live. You can find it at patreon.com/meandstevetalkrpgs, and we'll make sure that links to that are in the show notes.
Mm-hmm.
And
Come join us on the Discord,
hit us up on Discord, come to Facebook, come to Twitter. That's about
Yeah.
it. Tell your friends, tell your enemies, usual.
Mm-hmm. Tell your local game store owner if you want to. We actually have a local game store owner that I haven't heard from him in a while, but I know he was listening to the show pretty regularly.
I haven't. I need to check in on him.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've been up there.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking myself. Yeah, with that, I'll remind everyone to be kind to one another and get out there and play some RPGs.
Yep. Take care, y'all.
Intro and outro music by the band 12 Noon. You can email us at meandsteverpg@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at @andrpgs. Find us on Facebook at Me and Steve RPG Podcast, on Discord at Me and Steve RPGs, and as always, all of these links are in the show notes. Thank you, and be kind to one another.
How much for the cigar?
Cigar, $20, dog. You gotta go down the street to the store and buy that.
Oh, for goodness sakes, open the thing.
There's an outtake.
If I click it some more, thank you. 3, 4. All right.